probably one of my favorite stories in here. Jesus flipping tables.
He wrecked the bar, didn't he?
Yeah, saying,
He got in the bar fight, didn't he?
"You hypocrites!
Yeah.
You den of thieves." We might be thinking, well, Jesus didn't say that. Well, I'm afraid he did. But you think Jesus being like Mr. Rogers? Well, you can think that all you want to.
Well, he was just telling him, welcome to my neighborhood.
But David, I believe we have a transition.
This one starts out saying this is what he done on Monday.
Yeah.
Because we read in the last section we read where after he came in on the donkey, it was getting late, and he went back to Bethany. I think I don't know if that's where Martha and Mary lived, but some say that probably was. But then they this here talks about let's see, I think it was in this transition. One it says he stayed at some lady stayed at the Pharisees' place one time. It was Martha and Mary. Where he said they lived. I don't know. Bethany couldn't have been far from Jerusalem.
Yeah.
You had John's gospel. It's the house of Simon the leper. So he'd either stayed with Martha and Mary or stayed this Simon's place, and he traveled back and forth every day. So we just did Sunday the triumphal entry. He's gone back. Now he's come back to the temple. And this is what it says he did on Monday. Due to the overcrowding in the city, perhaps Jesus and the disciples stayed with friends in Bethany. That's what I'm saying. A small group, a small village over the crest of the Mount of Olives, 2 miles to the east of Jerusalem. I told you that couldn't have been far. In Mark's account, they re-entered the city on the next day. Thus, on Monday and on this day, Jesus cursed the fig tree and cleansed the temple. Matthew's account, however, presents a different sequence. Jesus cleansed the temple while it was still the first day or Sunday, and only then retreated to Bethany. While Moses commanded worship and sacrifice to be celebrated at a central sanctuary, a place that God chooses. This place came to be identified with Jerusalem, and naturally Israel's most solemn festival, Passover, was held in that city. Passover was a pilgrim's festival drawing 100,000 or more pilgrims to Jerusalem each spring. Like other observant Jews, Jesus and his followers arrived early in order to purchase a lamb for slaughter, to procure a place to celebrate the feast, and to undergo the necessary rites of purification. The commercial ventures of the temple were overseen by the Sadducees and were very lucrative. Jesus justified his attack on the animal dealers and currency exchangers by quoting the prophet Isaiah, "My house shall be called a house of prayer for all nations." Matthew, who writes his gospel for a primarily Jewish audience, omits the phrase "for all nations." Being irreverent for his audience, Mark possibly includes the phrase to show that Jesus is also Savior of the Gentiles. Because you gotta remember, Mark wrote this long after crucifixion.
Yeah.
They might want to throw in some stuff for Gentiles. The commercialization of the temple took place in the court of the Gentiles, depriving Gentiles of their only place to worship. Jesus responded to such profiteering with anger and decisive action. The Synoptic Gospels placed the temple cleansing during Jesus' final week in Jerusalem. The Gospel of John, however, places it at the outset of Jesus' ministry. One way of reconciling the difference is to assume that there were two temple cleansings. One early in Jesus' ministry, the one late, the Synoptics. Jesus' early placement of the episode is probably theological motivated, maybe to show the opposition to Jesus at the beginning of his ministry.
You know, you think he probably did that a lot when he went into the temples and the synagogues.
Who?
Jesus.
Yeah. Well, it says here the money changers were in the Gentile court. If you know anything about the temple, it was surrounded by a wall too.
Yes.
And on the inside, you had the women's court and Israel's court. Then outside of that, you had this big old courtyard. I mean, it was huge. And that was the Gentiles. And that's one reason why I told you there won't be another temple built unless you take the Dome of the Rock out. But I don't think the Gentiles, I don't think the Jews want to build in the Gentiles' court.
Interesting. Well, there you have it right there.
Kind of makes you wonder,
Yeah.
well, who's selling these things? Is there Gentiles trying to do a little profiteering too? Because it's out there in their court.
True.
Of course, then, when you went in, I don't know if it's the temple court or the Israel court, but you had to pay a tax to get in. That's where Jesus got told, was it Peter to go down and get the fish out of the fish's mouth? That was to pay the temple tax.
Man. Well.
Capitalism was alive and well back then too.
Oh yeah, yeah. Well, I love how he's mad at these people, but he also shows grace. Do you see what I'm talking about, David? Oh, didn't you want to read?
We're gonna read about Let's read this.
I'm sorry, Dad. Go ahead.
Don't worry about the money
Yeah.
changers in the temple court, which we're going to be reading Matthew 21:12. It says the temple in Jerusalem had always been divided into courts. Even in Solomon's temple, there was a court to which some were forbidden. All the people had access to the outer court, called the Great Court. The inner court, however, was reserved only for priests, and was thus called the court of the priests. Herod's temple, though still under construction in Jesus' time, was enormously impressive, consisting of 4 courts. The large outer court of the Gentiles was in the open air, a quadrangle measuring some 500 yards long by 325 yards.
Mm-hmm.
That's 5 football fields one way and 3 the other.
I'm telling you.
Enclosed by rows of tall columns. Thus was the only part of the temple open to Gentiles. Each of the remaining 3 courts of the temple was restricted to certain people. All 3 courts, the court of the women, the court of Israel, and the court of the priests, were located in the temple, the temple proper. A sublime edifice measuring some 150 yards by 100 yards. The complex stood in the middle of the court of the Gentiles, but only Jews were allowed to enter the first court. The court of women, that's the court of the women. Only Jewish men were admitted to the court of Israel. Sexist, aren't they?
I'm telling you what.
When Jesus observed the tables of the money changers who sold in the temple, he was standing in the court of the Gentiles. Only in this area were the merchants allowed to sell sheep and doves for sacrifice at Passover, to exchange foreign currency for the required temple offering. The outer court was the site of Jesus' dramatic temple cleansing.
Okay.
As big as that was, that's like going to a flea market and turning every table over in a flea market.
Yeah.
Or trade day.
Right.
I take some time. Unless you Speed Gonzales.
Okay. Matthew 21, starting in verse 12. Then Jesus went into the temple of God and drove out all of those who bought and sold in the temple, and overturned the tables of the money changers and the seats of those who sold doves. And then he said to them, "It is written, my house shall be called a house of prayer, but you have made it into a den of thieves." So think about it. Jesus is turning tables. He's obviously mad, right? But
Surprised he didn't get arrested.
yeah. But in the next breath, you guys are just a den of thieves. You're worthless morons. The next verse. Then the blind and the lame came to him in the temple. Can you see him, David?
Yep.
David. Jesus is so mad.
And then he's not.
And then, no.
He's
And then
not going to be mad when he heals these people.
Well, he's not mad at them. He's mad at these people.
Yeah.
So it's like, have you ever seen that cartoon? Or it might not be a cartoon, but there's a show of some kind. This guy is screaming and yelling at this. Someone did something wrong, and this other person is just passing through and says, "Hey, Ralph," and he's screaming and yelling, and then says, "Hey, Randy," and then he goes back to hollering at these other people. That's what I think about that this is going. Jesus is mad at them. Here they come. He just says, "Be healed." And anyway, I don't know. Then the blind and the lame came to him in the temple, and he healed them. But when the chief priests and scribes saw the wonderful things he did, and the children crying out in the temple, saying, here we go, David. Hosanna to the Son of David. They were indignant and said to him, "Do you hear what these are saying?" And Jesus said to them, "Yes. Have you ever read, out of the mouth of babes and nursing infants, you have perfected praise?" Okay, anyway. Out of the mouth of babes and nursing infants, you have perfected praise. Then he left them and went out of the city to Bethany, and he lodged there.
So, according to where they got it, that was his second day.
Yeah, it's interesting because, he can be mad at you, but also have so much grace for you. Do you see that too, David?
Mm-hmm.
He always has grace. Which, David, I have a question. What do you think it means when the Bible says you will be blotted out of the book of life? Hold on just a second. Once saved, always saved, right?
Yeah.
But
When's your name put in?
I would assume when you get saved.
Nope. Bible doesn't say that.
What does it say? What does the Bible say?
Bible never does say your name's added when you're saved.
What does the Bible say then? I'm genuinely asking because I.
Well, you go back to where Moses is in the wilderness with the people, and God is getting frustrated with them, and he tells Moses that I will blot their names from the book and start all over with you. Well, that indicates that this book existed before creation, and their names were already in it.
Always an answer in the Bible. You can read it.
So,
oh, by the way, Dave, you didn't say anything.
So it's
all the fall decorations.
Well, they can see it. That's why I turned that around. I was facing. So anyway,
go ahead.
Anyway, every human being, even Adam, that was created to those being born, from the creation of man till the end of man is going to be in that book to start with.
Bingo.
So some names are going to be those that don't believe, they're going to be taken out.
So what you're saying is what I was thinking all along. You know, David, I love being right. Anyway, so so you got.
Don't get egotistical over there.
Oh, I know it. Oh, look! I need to get a haircut. My head's getting too big.
Call you mop head.
Mop head. Yeah. Hey, I took a shower this month. I'm sorry, last month. But everyone's name that's ever lived and who will ever live is in that book, right? By the time of death, if they will be blotted if they're not a believer, right?
Yeah, they're probably taken out when they die if they're not a believer.
Mm-hmm. Anyway, okay, Dave, you got Mark?
Yeah. Okay, here it talks about the tree withered.
Yeah, the fig tree withered, yes, sir.
Now the next day, when they had come out from Bethany, he was hungry. And seeing from afar a fig tree having leaves, he went to see if perhaps it would have something on it, or in it. When he came to it, he found nothing but leaves, for it was not the season for figs. In response, Jesus said to it, "Let no one eat fruit from you ever again." And his disciples heard it. I'm taking it this next day is the day after he. It's still Monday.
Oh yeah.
This next day is going to be the day after his triumphant entry.
After Monday?
No, this is Monday.
Oh, I see. Okay, yeah.
Now we're doing it from Mark's view now.
Mark's perspective, yeah.
So Mark is calling the Monday the next day.
Yeah.
Not going from what Matthew said, which was a Monday.
Yes.
It says Jesus cleansed the temple.
Mm-hmm.
So they came to Jerusalem. Then Jesus went into the temple and began to drive out those who bought and sold in the temple, and overturned the tables of the money changers and the seats of those who sold doves. And he would not allow anyone to carry wares through the temple. Then he taught, saying to them, "Is it not written, my house shall be called a house of prayer for all nations? But you have made it a den of thieves." And the scribes and chief priests heard it and sought how they might destroy him, for they feared him, because all the people were astonished at his teaching. When evening had come, he went out of the city. Which would be corresponding to the last verse in Matthew 21:17.
That's right. Which brings us to Luke. What time we got?
22. I don't know. Got about 15 minutes.
Luke chapter 19. Then he went into the temple and began to drive out those who bought and and sold in it, saying to them, "It is written, my house is a house of prayer, but you have made it into a den of thieves." Let's see. And he was teaching daily in the temple, but the chief priests and scribes and the leaders of the temple sought to destroy him, and were unable to do anything, for all the people were very attentive to hear him. Interesting.
Very short.
Yeah, yeah.
They don't say if he was angry or anything.
Yep.
He just went in there and started driving them out. Didn't say he turned over anything or.
But it's implied that it's the same story, though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, here in what we read in Mark 11, chapter 11, 15 through 17, talking about the house of prayer and den of thieves. The ground plan of courts in Herod's temple restricted the access of some people. Jewish women were kept out of the court of Israel, which was on a higher level than the court of women. Gentiles were kept further out, forbidden also from the court of women. The Jewish people were extremely concerned that Gentiles not move from the court of the Gentiles to the rest of the temple. Posted signs warned that any Gentile proceeding further would do so at the cost of his or her life. One of the accusations hurled against the Apostle Paul was that he brought Gentiles into the temple. You find that's in Acts 21:28. Woo-hoo. Those who came to the temple for Passover needed to buy lambs and other animals. They also needed money changers because the local currency of the place they came from were different from the standard used in the temple. Merchants performed these services in the court of the Gentile, but in doing so, for distracting the Gentiles who came to worship God. In reaction, Jesus quoted the prophet Isaiah to emphasize God's plan for his temple. My house shall be called a house of prayer for all nations. You know. See, that's the thing about having them money changers and the doves and sheep and stuff like that.
Yeah.
If you was a farmer, you probably didn't have sheep or doves.
Right.
So when you got to the court, you bought them.
Yeah.
And of course, it tells you about those who come from these Jews who come from far off places. For the Passover, they weren't using Jewish currency; they were using where they came from. And it's kind of like you go into a country today, like go to Israel.
Yeah.
You got to change your dollars for their money.
Right.
Unless they take the dollar.
And that's highly unlikely, right?
There's a lot of places that their currency is the dollar. Nothing else.
Really?
Go to the little country of Belize,
Oh yeah.
down there, dollar. Nothing else.
Up in Africa?
No, it's in Central America.
Oh, Central America.
Mm-hmm.
Oh.
You go down there, it's a dollar. So you could retire down there for little or nothing. You could live down on Social Security when you get old. It's that cheap.
Wow.
Let's see. Jesus also quoted the prophet Jeremiah words about treating the temple court as a den of thieves. You can find that in Jeremiah 7:11. 7:11.
7-Eleven. No gas station.
Yeah. Just as thieves feel safe from bringing their loot to their den, Jeremiah's contemporaries believed that regardless of how they lived, God would not destroy his own temple. The prophet warned them, however, that because of their disobedience, they should not seek refuge in God's house. He would destroy their temple. Jesus had a similar message of judgment for his generation. They should not trust in the temple to protect them while they neither understood nor obeyed God's message. As Jeremiah has smashed a pot to symbolize the city's destruction, Jesus simply announced the temple's impending doom. Mark 13:2. We ain't got to that one yet.
Ooh. Okay, well, you mentioned Acts 21:28, and it says, shouting, fellow Israelites, help, help this man, this man who teaches everyone everywhere against our people, our law, in this place. What's more, he also brought Greeks into the temple, and has defiled this holy place.
That's talking about that's not talking about the, like I said, it's not the court of the Gentiles, it is the court of Israel.
That's right.
So he's bringing them pretty close to the temple itself.
And with that being said, that's all I got.
Yeah. So we've gone, so what we're looking at here, like I said, we're in the last part, we're in the last week of the Passover.
Yep.
And what we've done is we've done Palm Sunday and the day after.
Yep. And in the next session, we'll do Tuesday.
We get Tuesday. See what goes on then. Got to remember, he's cursed the pig, he's cursed his fig tree. And they say that the fig tree is supposed to be the symbol for Israel. So what he's telling Israel when he curses it, see, that was in so starting with Mark 11, where he says, let no one eat fruit from you ever again. So that fruit would probably be gospel to Israel.
Yeah, probably.
Mm.
That's it.
So David, we've covered a little territory here.
Yes, sir. We will get back to it Friday or next week.
Yeah. Might get to see you again Friday at our house.
Yes. Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Yeah.
But we will see you
Tuesday.
Tuesday.
Next Tuesday.
Next Tuesday. Or Monday.
Well, maybe you come back to the house Monday.
Okay. We'll figure it out.